page 266. You and I are simply only when the world behaves. When things break down, what has been ignored rushes in. When things no longer are specified with perception, the walls crumble, and chaos makes its presence known. When we've been careless and let things slide, what we have refused to attend to gathers itself up, adopts a serpentine form and strikes, often at the worst possible moment. It is then that we see what focused intent, precision of aim, and careful attention protects us from. Imagine a loyal and honest wife suddenly confronted by evidence of her husband's infidelity. She has lived alongside him for years. She saw him as she assumes he is, reliable, hardworking, loving, dependable. In her marriage, she is standing on a rock, or so she believes. But he becomes less attentive and more distracted. He begins, in cliched manner, to work longer hours. Small things, she says and does, irritate him unjustifiably. One day she sees him in a downtown cafe with another woman, interacting with her in a manner difficult to rationalize and ignore. The limitations and inaccuracy of her former perceptions become immediately and painfully obvious. Her theory of her husband collapses. What happens in consequence? First, someone emerges in his stead. A complex, frightening stranger. That's bad enough, but it's only half the problem. Her theory of herself collapses too in the aftermath of the betrayal, so that it's not only one stranger that's the problem, it's two. Her husband is not who she perceives him to be, but neither is she, the betrayed wife. She is no longer the well-loved, secure wife and valued partner. Strangely enough, despite our belief in the permanent immutability of the past, she may never have been. The past is not necessarily what it was, even though it has already been. The present is chaotic and indeterminate. The ground shifts continually around her feet and ours. Equally, the future, not yet here, changes into something it was not supposed to be. Is the once reasonably content wife now a deceived innocent or a gullible fool? Should she view herself as victim or as co-conspirator in a shared delusion? Her husband is what? Her husband is what? An unsatisfied lover? Her husband is what? An unsatisfied lover? A target of seduction, a psychopathic liar, the very devil himself? How could he be so cruel? How could anyone? The very devil himself? How could he be so cruel? How could anyone? What is this home she has been living in? How could she be so naive? How could anyone? She looks in the mirror. Who is she? What's going on? Are any of her relationships real? Have any of them ever been? What has happened to the future? Everything is up for grabs when the deeper realities of the world unexpectedly manifest themselves. Everything is intricate beyond imagining. Everything is affected by everyone else. We perceive a very narrow slice of a casually interconnected matrix. Although we strive with all our might to avoid being confronted by knowledge of that narrowness, the thin veneer of perceptual sufficiency cracks. However, when something fundamental goes wrong, the dreadful inadequacy of our senses reveal itself. Everything we hold dear crumbles to dust. We freeze. We turn to stone. What then do we see? Where can we look when it is precisely what we see that has been insufficient? What do we see when we don't know what we're looking at? What is it that is the world after the Twin Towers disintegrate? What, if anything, is left standing? What dread beast rises from the ruins when the invisible pillars supporting the world's financial system tremble and fall? What do we see when we are swept up in the fire and drama of a nationalist socialist party, or cower paralyzed with fear in the midst of a massacre in Rwanda? What is it that we see when we cannot understand what is happening to us, cannot determine where we are, know no longer who we are, and know no longer who we are, and no longer understand what surrounds us? What we don't see is the well-known and comforting world of tools, of useful objects, of personalities. We don't even see familiar obstacles, sufficiently troubling though they are in normal times already mastered, that we can simply step around. What we perceive when things fall apart is no longer the stage and setting of habitable order. It's the eternal watery tohu vabohu, formless emptiness, in the Tehom, the abyss, to speak biblically, the chaos forever lurking beneath our thin surfaces of security. It's from that chaos that the holy word of God himself extracted order at the beginning of time, according to the oldest opinions expressed by mankind. And it is in the image of that same word that we were made, male and female, according to the same opinions. It's from that chaos that whatever stability we had the good fortune to experience emerged, originally for some limited time, when we first learned to perceive. It's chaos that we see when things fall apart, even though we cannot truly see it. What does all this mean? Emergency. Emergence. Why? This is the sudden manifestation from somewhere unknown of some previously unknown phenomenon. From the Greek, phanetai, to shine forth. Hi! And so the deceived wife, increasingly unhinged, feels the motivation to reveal all, to herself, her sister, her best friend, to a stranger on a bus, or retreats into silence, and ruminates obsessively to the same end. What went wrong? What did she do that was so unforgivable? Who is this person she has been living with? What kind of world is this, where such things can happen? What kind of God would make such a place? What conversation could she possibly initiate with this new infuriating person, inhabiting the shell of her former husband? What forms of revenge might satisfy her anger? Who could she seduce in return for the insult? She is by turns enraged, terrified, struck down by pain, and exhilarated by the possibilities of her newfound freedom. Her last place of bedrock security was in fact not stable, not certain, not bedrock at all. Her house was built on a foundation of sand. The ice she was skating on was simply too thin. She fell through into the water below and is drowning. She has been hit so hard that her anger, terror, and grief consume her. Her sense of betrayal widens until the whole world caves in. Where is she? In the underworld with all its terrors? How did she get there? This experience, this voyage into the substructure of things. This is all perception, too, in its nascent form. This preparation, this consideration of what might have been and what could be. This emotion and fantasy. This is all the deep perception now necessary before the familiar objects that she once knew reappear, if they ever do, in their simplified and comfortable form. This is perception before the chaos of possibility. This is perception. This is perception before the chaos of possibility is re-articulated into the functional realities of order. Was it really so unexpected, she asks herself? She asks others, thinking back. Should she now feel guilty about ignoring the warning signs, subtle though they might have been, encouraged though she was to avoid them? She remembers when the first marriage, eagerly joining her husband every single night to make love. Perhaps that was too much to accept. Perhaps that was too much to expect, or even too much to cope with. But once in the last 6 months. Once every 2 or 3 months, for years before that, would anyone she could truly respect, including herself, put up with such a situation? One day it bursts forth, in a form that no one can ignore. It lifts the very household from its foundations. Then it's an affair, or a decades-long custody dispute of ruinous economic and psychological proportions. Then it's the concentrated version of the acrimony that could have been spread out tolerably, issue by issue, over the years of a pseudo-paradise of marriage. Every one of the 300,000 unrevealed issues which had been lied about, avoided, rationalized away, hidden like an army of skeletons in some great horrific closet, burst forth like Noah's flood, drowning everything. There's no ark because no one built one, even though everyone felt the storm gathering. Don't ever estimate the destructive power of sins of omission. Maybe the demolished couple could have had a conversation or two, or 200, about their sex lives. Maybe the physical intimacy they undoubtedly shared should have been matched, as it often is not, by a correspondingly psychological intimacy. Maybe they could have fought through their roles. In many households in recent decades, the traditional household division of labor has been demolished, not least in the name of liberation and freedom. That demolition, however, has not left so much glorious lack of restriction in its wake as chaos, conflict, and indeterminacy. The escape from tyranny is often followed not by paradise, but by a sojourn in the desert, aimless, confused, and deprived. Furthermore, in the absence of agreed-upon tradition and the constraints, often uncomfortable, often even unreasonable, that it imposes, there exist only 3 difficult options: slavery, tyranny, or negotiation.
I mean, I'm not an employee of MAPS, although I'm an active volunteer for the Zendo project within MAPS.
Yes.
And I love what MAPS is doing, and I love the Zendo project, and I feel it's really important in this day and age.
And didn't you say before that you've known people who have been transformed in their addictions and their depression through certain natural holistic medicines?
Yes, I have. I've met people primarily associated with MAP studies, and I've worked with people. Most of the people that I work with don't have any big psychological issues. You know, they want to move forward spiritually, and so I haven't had any major transformations with the one-on-one that I work. With Zendo, I've worked with some people that really were off the wall into other zones of reality, and with the support of MAPS Zendo, you know, we did some good in helping those people go through the experience and come out the other side a little bit better off.
Yeah, yeah. We're still in the new frontier when it comes to psychedelic medication or psychedelic substances used as medication, you know.
Yeah.
However, wherever depending on what the use case is, you know. What I do know is that what is in existence on the market in the pharmaceutical industry, a lot of them can be just as deadly addictive as any other plant medication.
Absolutely.
If not more.
Absolutely.
That's the truth.
And detrimental to one's well-being.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally. I know a few people that have been on psychotropic medication who's developed permanent shaky leg syndrome. You know, and it's, you know, it debilitates a person from going out and doing more outdoor activities, which is so necessary to our spiritual and physical healing.
Yeah, they have very particular cameras they want to shoot this with. So we had to, they shipped this one to me. The neighborhood, or maybe go to the different sites around Sedona, or?
I'm more writing right now, in writing mode.
So you're in like a retreat, basically?
Yeah, yeah.
Even doves have just new standard. Alone in the world is so cold. Maybe I'm just too demanding. Maybe I'm just like my father too, but maybe just like my mother. She never satisfied. Why do we scream at each other? This is what it sounds like. Doves cry. Once upon a time, boy met a girl, and everything inside of that crazy world was beautiful. Everyone could see they were in love, sweet love. Every day a fantasy, every moment like a dream, sent from above. Yeah, sweet love only comes to those whose hearts are on their sleeve. Yeah, sweet love stops so time if you hold on, if you won't leave. Yeah, sweet love, sweet love, sweet love. That's all we need. Yeah, sweet love, sweet love, sweet love. Don't ever leave. Yeah, yeah. ounce of their soul shining through their eyes, nothing else than to feel like smooth golden honey, warm maple syrup, sweet to the taste, like fruit on a platter, nothing else matters, no time to waste. Yes, sweet love only comes to those whose hearts are on their sleeve. Yes, sweet love stops some time, and if you hold on it won't leave. Yes, sweet love, sweet love, sweet love is all we need. Yes, sweet love, sweet love. Don't let me.
When you wear your heart on your sleeve,
Yeah.
right? That moment of sweet love where you can profess it,
Yeah.
you put it out there in the universe. You're also shining, okay? You're also breaking open. You're breaking your heart open. And when there's someone who loves you and sees that full-on butterfly effect, the shining of it is so intense
Yes.
that they're afraid of the light.
Yes.
They don't trust it because they're not used to it.
Yeah.
And so it's almost as if they don't feel like they deserve it on a subconscious level. And so they shirk from it for a while. And the thing with light bearers or light beings is that we can't push it on them. It's something that we have to just hold the torch and wait for them to take part in it. This is called an oscillator?
Dream oscillator.
Dream oscillator.
Yeah. So the first time I was introduced to this was at my friend's wedding, and it was a gift. And the next day I was on LSD, and I was able to figure out the motion and the movements of it
Wow.
in order to get the middle ring spinning so intensely quick that it reminded me of a lot of things I'd forgotten.
Wow.
And I really wanted one. So a year later, I decided to make one.
So this is the one you made?
Yeah, no, this is my part of my life work in this life. Is spreading these around the world.
This is one that we got from Cameron.
Wow.
Because it changed my life, and I know it's going to help others in their journey.